Aloha kako to all our viewers out in the University of California, Riverside and around the world, everybody watching. My name is Samuel Wilder King II Kalani Kupua. I am the Executive Director of Imua TMT. Now, as you saw on our flyer, we are a grassroots organization that is Native Hawaiian led and is advocating the construction of the 30-meter telescope on Maunakea. Now, just to give everyone a chance to settle in and get any technical issues worked out, I want to give a brief introduction of what Imua TMT is, what it means to be a grassroots organization, Native Hawaiian-led group. Imua TMT started out as a Facebook page created by our founder. Wow, I'm blanking on names right now. That's astonishing. Malia Martin. Sorry.
Malia.
So Malia founded this page about 6 years ago is when she got involved in this discussion. She founded it as a safe place for Native Hawaiians to discuss the TMT, because for Native Hawaiians that have supported TMT, like many of the people you're seeing on this panel here, it's been scary. There's been bullying and threats and cyberbullying. People like Mailani Neal in particular were threatened with having their, throats slit and their blood spilled on the mountain and given police protection, these kinds of things. This is why we were created in the first instance. Fast forward to July of last year, when the governor, to everyone's astonishment, was not enforcing the law to push the project forward and arrest the protesters. There was an outpouring of a lot of confusion, and a lot of supporters for the TMT didn't have an outlet for saying, hey, we want to express our voice. The protesters are getting a lot of attention, so why aren't we? So I started looking around for groups out there that are supporting TMT, that are online, because I know they were out there. And one of the hashtags that was trending at the time was Imua TMT. So I searched for that and I found Malia's group. So Malia and I got together, and this is what it means to be grassroots. We got together on text messages and we decided, hey, we need to do our own rally in favor of TMT. And we also need to create a bank account so we can start fundraising. So we got together in a L&L plate lunch place in the corner of a Walmart and wrote down our minutes for our group, our bylaws, on a little piece of lined note paper that she tore out of her book. And we went from there. And when we had this rally, I wrote an op-ed that announced the rally. And the op-ed was important because I had run for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs a couple of years ago, so people had kind of recognized where I was coming from. I had also was put on a spread next to protesters, so it got a certain amount of attention. But more fundamentally, my family has been in Hawaii for a very long time. And well, my name is kind of Staniwala King II, not really that big a deal. But Sam King, my grandfather, was a federal judge who was very involved in dismantling a web of corruption that was infecting Kamehameha Schools, which was it's one of the largest trusts in the entire country that supports Native Hawaiians. It's the largest trust in the country, period, but also supports Native Hawaiians. And so a lot of people recognize that, and it was enough to get people to read the first two paragraphs of the op-ed, which is where we said, come to this rally on this day at this time. And at that, a lot of supporters came out, and Malia knew a lot of these people from the last 6 years. We met a lot of them at the rally, and we started going from there. One of the people that we met at the rally that we got to know, and Malia also introduced me to, was a gentleman named Roy Gal. And Roy Gal is part of the Institute for Astronomy, and he's an astronomer, and he cued me into two students who were doing a talk at UH named Tyler Kupono Trent and Makana Silva. And these two guys gave a presentation at an astronomy fair at the University of Hawaii that was absolutely one of the best discussions I've ever seen about anything, anywhere, but certainly about TMT, where they were able to present their views respectfully and engage the audience in a back and forth discussion. Needless to say, I was so excited to meet these two guys who are Native Hawaiian astrophysicists that I immediately convinced them, despite the fact that they had plane tickets to go back to their mainland universities like the next day. I convinced them in zippies, like, no, you can't leave. We got to fly to Maunakea. So you gotta delay your travel plans for a week, which they did, and we flew them over there. They got a chance to meet Leimomi Lum, who, if you look at our website, imuatmt.org, you can see Leimomi Lum is a kahuna of the ancient Kapu religion order, and she's the kahuna of Mo'okini Heiau. And she had an opportunity to invite them to go there. So Makana and Tyler got to go there and center themselves before they went up to Maunakea. They went to see the telescopes, Lake Waiau. And they also, then I went up with them and we got a chance to camp out at Maunakea for a night. The second night that while we were leaving, Tyler and Makana got a chance to sit down with some of the kapuna who were leading the protest. I was outside arguing with the lawyer that was supporting the protest, which was very exciting for me. And that's kind of how we all got together in this group. And the speakers now will give their own introductions and kind of talk about where they came from. And without further ado, I want to introduce our moderator for the day, Tyler Trent. So in addition to all the wonderful things Tyler's been up to that I just described, Tyler was born and raised on the island of Oahu, where he graduated from Kamehameha Schools Kapalama campus. He went on to graduate from the University of Hawaii at Manoa with his Bachelor's of Science in Physics and Mathematics. Currently, he is a graduate student at the University of Arizona, where his research focuses on simulating accretion around black holes. Tyler, without further ado, take it away.
Thank you, Sam. Aloha, everyone. I'm Tyler, and I just also want to start by introducing all of our panelists today, and then they'll go into and give also a little brief introduction about them. So I'll go around the room, starting with Mailani. So Mailani was born and raised in Kona on the Big Island. She attended Kamehameha Schools Kapalama for 5 years and finished high school at the Hawaii Preparatory Academy. Mailani also received her Bachelor's of Science in Applied Physics with a concentration in astronomical instrumentation at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. She is now pursuing her PhD in physics with a specialization in instrumentation at New Mexico Tech. And Mailani has spent 2 summers as an intern in engineering technology at the East Asian Observatory for the James Clark Maxwell Telescope on Mauna Kea. And then we also have Makana. Makana is from Makaha, Oahu, where he graduated from Kamehameha Schools Kapalama. He then went on to graduate from the University of Hawaii at Manoa with his Bachelor's of Science in Physics. And currently he is a doctoral candidate at the Ohio State University, where his research focuses on exoplanets, black holes, and cosmology. Next, I'll introduce Kimo, or Mr. Stone. Mr. Stone is a Hawaii attorney with 30 years of experience whose practice focuses upon the presentation of real estate companies, trade associations, and risk management. He has written 15 certified real estate continuing education courses, over 40 real estate related training modules, and well over 100 real estate related articles covering a wide range of topics. Regarding Hawaiian culture, Mr. Stone is an accomplished musician and hula practitioner who was trained by Winona Beamer and Henry Moikeha. And Mr. Stone has recorded 5 CDs and has been nominated for 3 Nahoku Hanohano Awards. In 2008, he won the Hoku for Album of the Year for Nealani Eha as co-producer and recording artist. Additionally, he was the president of the Hawaiian Music Hall of Fame from 2004 to 2016. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Kalepa Baybayan. Clappa was born and raised in Lahaina and has been an active participant in the Polynesian voyaging renaissance since 1975. Clappa has served as captain and navigator on board the iconic Hawaiian double-hulled voyaging canoe, Hokulea, as well as the canoes Hawaiiloa and Hoku Alakai. In 2007, he was one of the 5 men initiated into the Order of Po, a 3,000-year-old society of deep-sea navigators by their teacher, Master Navigator Maupiailug, on the island of Satawa. Kalepa has served as Imiloa's first navigator in residence since his appointment in 2009. He most recently participated in the 3-year Malama Honua worldwide voyage. And he returned to school late in life, graduating with his bachelor's from Kahaka Ula o Ke'elikolani College of Hawaiian Language in 1997, and followed with a master's in education from Heritage College. So that is our panelists for today. And now I just want to go around the room and have them all just briefly introduce why they care about TMT and why they're involved. So let's start with Makana.
Yeah, hello, Mai Kako. Thank you for the introduction, Tyler and Sam. Yeah, so for me, real quick, my involvement really started with Tyler, concurrently with Tyler, around August of 2019, when we were asked by a professor or a few professors at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii Manoa to actually participate in like this discussion sequence where people come and discuss, Maunakea, the science being conducted on Maunakea, the history, and of course, the focal point being TMT. And so for me, my involvement really started then when Tyler and I were invited to give a talk, gave the talk, met Sam King, and from there we started meeting many of the different components of TMT, the legal side, the science side, the engineering side, and we're still going on this massive journey, just learning as much as we can about the project, being involved as much as we can as students, and ultimately for us, learning more about the thing, this entity that we support, and honestly just gives us more reasons to support it the more we learn about what this thing really stands for and what it really means. So that's my involvement with TMT at the moment.
Okay. Thanks, Makana. Kimo, did you want to tell us why you care about TMT?
Hello, Tyler. Hello, everyone on YouTube who might be listening. My name is James Mauliola Keaka Stone Jr. I'm 63 years old. I'm an attorney, an educator, cultural practitioner. And I'm involved because the story about Maunakea and the practice of science and telescopes was or is currently so one-sided and sort of manipulative of our culture that I felt compelled to say something. The most important scientific instrument at this time, I think, in the world is being obstructed by a relatively small group who have used their claim to cultural knowledge and practice as a weapon against many of us and our culture and our island who desperately need and support science, the knowledge gained by science, and the economic opportunities provided for by science. All of my efforts will not benefit me. I don't have a client involved. I get paid nothing for speaking out, but it is necessary for my daughter's generation and Mailani's generation and Tyler's generation and Makana's generation that we have a future for science in Hawaii. Mahalo.
Thank you. So, Mailani, would you also like to share?
Thank you, Tyler. I would love to share. And first of all, I'd like to give my aloha to all of those listening and my fellow panel members. It's great to see you all again. My involvement with TMT started back in 2015. My involvement with astronomy started much longer before that. When I was 9 years old, I learned about the ways of Hawaiian navigation and voyaging, and it made me realize that I can be a native Hawaiian as well as a modern day scientist and feel true and genuine in both of those aspects through astronomy. And so since I was 9 years old, I've known that I've wanted to be involved in the field of astronomy, and I have forged my way through my career to do so. I attended the High Stars program at UH Manoa for 2 summers, and there I was able to be introduced to many of the astronomers at UH Manoa, as well as connections to astronomers on Maunakea. And as Tyler has mentioned before, I've spent 2 summers working there. and I received my undergraduate degree in applied physics, and I'm now pursuing my PhD so that someday I can return home and be qualified and experienced and really the best in the field of astronomy. That is what Maunakea enables us to do. So rewinding to 2015, I became involved with TMT because as a little senior in high school, I started an online petition to support TMT. It is called We Support TMT. It is on a website called gopetition.com. And I have now received over 9,000 signatures on this petition, which far exceeded anything I ever imagined. I started this petition because when construction was set to begin for the TMT, we saw some protesters obstructing the way, and I felt that it was very unfair that this was the representation on behalf of my people, because even if I was the only one who felt that way, not all Hawaiians are opposed to the 30-meter telescope. Quite the contrast, actually. Quite a few of us support it. And so I wanted my voice to be heard, and I started this online petition, and it really took off and eventually led me to making even more connections in regard to supporting the telescope, as well as being a native Hawaiian pursuing astronomy. Like had the chance now to really connect with Tyler and Makana and Dr. Kaluna, who I had met a few years before. And so, yeah, as Makana had stated earlier before, that this has been a journey for us as Native Hawaiians supporting the 30-meter telescope, and we will continue.
Thank you, Mailani. So Clappa, how did you, as a master navigator, get involved in 30-meter telescope?
Well, I'll take a few minutes, Tyler. Thank you.
No, perfect. Go for it.
Welcome to everyone. You know, I think as an oceanic people, as a Hawaiian people, we've forgotten that we are connected through our DNA and our cultural roots to the stars. We're descended from this exploring race that left the safety of the shores, and in so doing, we discovered the stars, and the stars led us along this great pathway of discovery all throughout the ocean. And I realized that. So I've always been an advocate for astronomy, not just TMT. I was fighting for astronomy on Maunakea long before TMT was ever a plan. And so my relationship with Maunakea is grounded in the many occasions that this special mountain has led me back to my home and to my family as a navigator aboard Hawaii's voyaging canoes. But share a story. On the evening of February 26 in the year 2000, 21 days after leaving Tahiti, a crew of 15 men and women sailing on board Hokulea arrived off Hawaii Island. As the island loomed large in the foreground, a colleague and I were in deep conversation. On the horizon, the slopes of Mauna Kea rose out of the sea, its summit silhouetted by the fabric of stars that circled overhead. The conversation quieted as we stared toward that immense sight. As we looked west, the wind gently pulling us along, I stared at the majesty unfolding before me, the star field circling overhead and the arcing towards Mauna Kea, welcoming the night sky. On this cloudless night, at sea, peering with my crewmates at the awesome sight of Mauna Kea, the stars reached down out of the sky and touched the landscape of the mountain, and you recognize that they are the same, Mauna Kea and the sky. At that moment, I realized that Mauna Kea and the universe were one, and that Mauna Kea was truly a portal to the universe. Mauna Kea is a celestial window into the universe. Since that moment, I've been an advocate for astronomy in Hawaii. My realization that astronomy needs to be an integral part of Hawaii's community is steeped in the tradition of the oceanic explorers who discovered these islands. By sailing away from the safety of distant shores, they discovered the stars. The wayfinding techniques used on deep sea canoes rely upon traditional methods of observing the stars, sensitizing one's body to the motion of the sea, and observing all unnatural clues that surround you. Seafaring is but one of the many examples that illustrate how our ancestors' wisdom to adapt and use their knowledge and resources to survive. It manifests the body of knowledge into the culture we know today. As explorers, Hawaiian
Clappa, you there?
I think maybe his internet connection has him paused a bit.
Oh man, I was just getting into that story. Yeah, I guess when you're out at sea, you get pretty good at telling stories.
Well, perhaps we should just move on until he comes back then.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Oh, there he is.
Okay.
Sorry, Clappy, cut out for a sec.
Okay, the Maunakea Ad Score, the largest in the world, offers conclusive evidence that the ancients recognized the importance of Mauna Kea's rich resources and its ability to serve its community by producing the tools to sustain daily life. They ventured to Mauna Kea, reshaped the environment by quarrying rock, left behind evidence of their work, and took the materials off the mountain to serve their communities with the full consent and in the presence of their gods. Using the resources of Mauna Kea as a tool to serve and benefit the community through astronomy is consistent with the example of the Ad Score. To value astronomy and its work on Mauna Kea, we have to value the importance of Ike, knowledge, and its quest for our greater understanding of the universe we live in. Our ancestors were no different. They sought knowledge from their environment, including the stars, to guide them and to give them a greater understanding of the universe that surrounded them. The science of astronomy helps us advance human knowledge to the benefit of the community. It teaches us where we have come from, where we are going. Its impact has been positive, introducing the young to the process of modern exploration and discovery, a process consistent with past traditional practices. My perspective of Mauna Kea is based upon the tradition of oceanic explorers from whom I descend. As a Hawaiian, I recognize that I am descendant of some of the best naked eye astronomers in the world. It is culturally consistent to advocate for Hawaiian participation in a field of science that continues to enable that tradition and a field in which we ought to lead. I firmly believe that the highest level of desecration rests in the actions that remove the opportunity and choices from the kind of future our youth can own. In closing then, at times the knowledge revealed from astronomical discoveries is frightening, of galaxies colliding and black holes consuming all that comes close to them. However, the fearfulness of this discovery should be viewed with an islander's perspective by recognizing our remoteness and vulnerability. As islanders, we're isolated, surrounded by a sea on all our horizons, and only an ocean of stars overhead as a companion. But through careful stewardship and a willingness to adapt and learn, we continue to survive. I recognize that our planet is part of a greater natural cycle of the larger universe, and there is little we can do to influence our future set amid a dynamic universe. The ultimate job of humanity must be to ensure that our planet lives a full and fruitful life. It is not science fiction to recognize that our future lies in the darkness of space, somewhere among the stars that gave us life. Astronomy must provide the answers to where our future will be and the challenges we will have to overcome to arrive there. In order for humanity to survive, we will have to travel light years, but each of us has only a lifetime to contribute to that effort. When it is completed, the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea will, with greater accuracy and speed, vastly increase the capacity for the kind of scientific research that is vital to the quest for mankind's future. The search for valuable knowledge on the summit of Mauna Kea is a spiritual mission that takes place on a special mountain and is consistent with the work of our ancestral forebears and is done to the benefit of tomorrow's generations here in Hawaii and across the globe. Mauna Kea, like life, is revered and special. We need to proceed with the important work of ensuring our future. And let's look to Mauna Kea and continuous synergy of mountain exploration and study. Thank you.
Thank you, Clappa. That was beautiful. That, kind of leads me into the next question that I wanted to ask, which was, so specifically with the 30-meter telescope development plan, how how is that plan respecting Hawaiian cultural practices? So for example, like, you know, Mauna Kea, someone considers Akua, the place of the gods. So how is TMT's development plan, you know, not desecration? I don't know if Clappa, you want to take this one first?
Okay, well, desecration is a matter of opinion, right? It's not a matter of fact. Desecration is a statute. You cannot desecrate in Hawaii. So if you're claiming desecration, then I would suspect that somebody would have challenged it into courts, which they haven't done, because it's a statute. But you know, our relationship with Hawaiian gods really comes down to, I would reframe that question, you know, is whether is Mauna Kea sacred, right? And it really comes to the definition of what is sacred, right? What by definition are we talking about when we're talking about sacred, right? So sacred on all word platforms will tell you that in its first definition is that it's a relationship between God and God. It's about a religious relationship. So as a native Hawaiian, I'm speaking for myself, I don't consider the mountain as sacred. And that's because in 1819, the majority of the ranking ali, ranking chiefdom, abolished the religious system, right? They didn't cherry pick and say, what gods you can worship, but you cannot worship. They completely abolished the religious order. And so as a native Hawaiian, I'm not going to act contrary to the will and wisdom of our ranking chiefdom by resurrecting and abolish religion. So everyone has the freedom to worship their particular religious beliefs. I just choose not to consider Mauna Kea as sacred. I do consider it a spiritual environment, and spirituality is about what moves a human spirit. It's about a relationship to place as opposed to, and a relationship to environment as opposed to a religious relationship. And so, yeah, and you know, TMT is not standing in the way of Hawaiians practicing their religious beliefs on the mountain. Yeah.
I see. Kimo, did you want to also add on to that?
Sure. The short answer is no. The claim that Mauna Kea is a sacred place of the gods is a modern notion. There is no documentation in the literature that suggests that Mauna Kea is somehow particularly sacred. And Kalepa is correct. The Battle of Kupono in 1819, when the reigning king, Liholiho was Mo'i, decided that issue. Keku'okalani was a rebel, he's a high chief, and he wanted to preserve the old kapu system. He lost at that battle. He was killed, as was his wife Monono. The king declared everyone was Ainoa. Ainoa means we are able to eat freely. For hundreds of years, Hawaiians were governed in their daily life, in every aspect of their daily life, by kapu, which was a system that allowed us to do certain things at certain times and prevented men and women from eating together. When the king proclaimed that we were Ainoa, we were free to eat together, the entire underpinning of the Hawaiian language and, the Hawaiian religion was removed. There was no longer a foundation for that. And so while some modern day Hawaiians have religious beliefs and want to engage in religious or cultural ceremonies on the mountain, I wholeheartedly celebrate and support those efforts. And so does the management plan for the mountain. Where I disagree with the protesters is they are preventing science and other Hawaiians from practicing in their own manner. There is no one way. The old Hawaiian proverb that not all knowledge comes from one school, I think applies here. So I celebrate people exercising cultural and religious practices. That does not, however, give them the right to deny me, Kalepa, Mailani, or anyone else the right to practice in their own fashion, whether it's science or culture.
Thank you. So, you know, is there a long history of astronomy on the mountain, Kimo?
Well, about 47 years. The Hawaii in the late 50s and early 60s was a plantation-based economy and society. Large sugar plantations, large pineapple plantations provided the bulk of the economic system, as well as some military input. Governor Burns, who was the second governor after statehood was in 59, along with the Hilo business community, recognized that there was going to be a time when manual labor jobs like we had on the plantations were not going to be viable. Late 60s, early 70s, Governor Burns and the community on Hawaii Island identified two particular areas where we had special advantage. And those areas were oceanography and astronomy. And as it turns out, the best place in the world to practice astronomy is in Hawaii. Now, for a half dozen administrations, the government has been trying to promote high-tech industries in Hawaii. But the truth is, we will never replace Silicon Valley. Their positioning, their infrastructure, their educational systems are so much better. However, in terms of STEM and high tech, we have the advantage in oceanography and astronomy. That is something that could work. And I want to note that we are now in this Brady Bunch view on a panel because of the coronavirus, which is going to, by some estimates, shut down 80% of resort-connected employment and economic activity. The single biggest engine for Hawaii's economy is the visitor industry. The TMT by itself represents 1.4 billion, probably as much as $2 billion of economic activity. It is a crime if in the face of the obvious pandemic catastrophe, we don't get going with shovel-ready projects in a non-polluting, in a knowledge-based, high-value activity like astronomy. That is, again, what I think is criminal. This is no longer a theoretical or academic argument. It's an existential argument for people of Hawaii, the most isolated landmass on the planet. If you needed a reason to support TMT, our current isolation because of social distancing makes that argument, I think.
I just want to add on, yeah, sorry to steal so much time, but you know, we're not a manufacturing state, right? We don't have minerals that we can harvest and export. But if you think about the sky, that sky is no different. It's a resource that we can harvest and we can export the knowledge in a marketable fashion. So yeah, it's worth millions and millions of dollars in research monies to the state economy.
Yeah,
I'd like to add on really quickly.
Please go.
To what Kalepa just said, how the sky is such a great resource for us economically, but also just in, I believe, our purpose. I think many of us here are very passionate about making sure that the Hawaiian culture is perpetuated past all of our own generations. And so the sky provides a resource for us. Last year, the first black hole was imaged, and it was given the name Povehi, which is a Hawaiian name. The first intersolar system object that we've seen was also given a Hawaiian name, Oumuamua. And these are names that are going to be remembered in the field of science, as well as even in popular culture, for much longer than any of us here on the panel today will be around. And this is a resource that we can use responsibly to better our community.
Thank you.
If I could add one thing as well.
Okay, go for it.
And the only reason why is because the common theme right now that we've discussed in this chain of thought is the utilization, the practicality, the pono-ness, right, of using Maunakea. And I guess for me, real quickly, I guess one other thing I want to add for people who are saying, well, get plenty other high places, yeah, for put the telescope. Well, that's true. But what I want to speak about is some of the real special features that really make Maunakea special. And I mean, literally, there's nowhere else on the planet like it, right? It's its height, how high it sits in the atmosphere, its location here on the equator, and it's its shape. Those three attributes, I'm not going to go too much into the actual climate details, but when you put a telescope and you're trying to observe, one of the hardest things is atmospheric disturbance. You have turbulence. You have things that can get in the way and can skew the image of the things you're trying to study and analyze. And if I want to put a telescope somewhere and I want that crystal clear picture of the sky, and I want to be able to really catch as much clear light from those faint objects, you know, millions and millions of miles away from us, I want to be able to have the clearest picture of them. Maunakea provides that location. There's minimal turbulence. There's minimal air disturbance. It makes it extremely efficient to build those images. And for us as human beings to take what we see in the sky from the pixel and perform our analysis so that we can further understand what's out there and how that affects us here at home. So I just wanted to add that real briefly.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. It seems like we have a, wait. So Makana, it seems like there's a question for you, asking about the comparison to Chile.
I have the answer for that if you'd like me to
That's
share.
even better.
Likewise.
Okay, so Atacama, which is in Chile, is in the southern hemisphere. There are already a couple of 30-meter telescopes and slightly bigger than 30-meter telescopes planned and in the process of being built there. And so the big idea is to get a 30-meter or large telescope in the northern hemisphere because some of the stars in the northern that you can see from the northern hemisphere are shrouded when you're in the southern hemisphere and vice versa. A comparison of Mauna Kea to the secondary site for TMT in the Canary Islands is that due to characteristics of the atmosphere, as Makana had mentioned earlier, another one being humidity levels, water vapor levels. The science to be done on the Canary Islands site would take 3 times as long as doing it from Mauna Kea. And that is completely due to the fact that Mauna Kea is so much more clear.
Oh, thank
Little
you.
comparison.
Perfect. No, great. So
if I could piggyback on Mailani real quick, if there's enough for it. Yeah, and exactly what Mailani was saying about the idea that in the southern hemisphere, we have very large telescopes already built, and we can see things in the southern sky. And one of the questions that I'm commonly asked is, well, we already get one big telescope, and you know, there's going to be I think there's a proposed project that's going to be even bigger than the 30-meter telescope, the extremely large telescope, I believe also somewhere in South America.
Right.
And people tell me, well, if you get one, well, we need another. So for me, my answer is the idea that if you're on a sphere, right, you put a little tack on a ball somewhere if you get basketball. Ask yourself, can you see the entirety of the sky? Can you see everything around that sphere? Right? Let the sphere rotate, right, about some fixed axis. Can you see every point, all angles of all solid angles of the sky? And the answer is no, not from a single point, right? Especially when you have that fixed rotational axis. So what we're doing essentially by having this 30-meter telescope in the northern hemisphere, we get access now that beautiful clarity from Mauna Kea of the entire northern sky. That's what we're going to get.
And I would just add I would ask this question, Tyler, is it wise to invest $2 billion in an environment that is second best at the closest to in comparison to Mauna Kea? To me, if I was putting money in a project, if I'm putting that amount of money in a project, I would hold out for the best environment that it possibly could be built on. It's just common sense.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. Funding into science is scarce as it is, and to spend your scarce resources, on a project like that, you better make sure that it's going to produce as much as it possibly can. So we had one other question that I want to get to. It's about a legal question, so I think Kimo, this one's perfect for you. Who owns the Maunakea access road?
If the question is so much who owns the Maunakea access road, there's been over a decade of litigation where not only was the question of ownership addressed, but the question of permitting, of environmental compliance, of building height and structural requirements, of access to the mountain in conjunction with other types of practices like Hawaiian cultural practices. It really isn't any one little nugget. It's sort of the shiny object arguments that we get very often from protesters who say, what about this or what about that, as if it matters. Every one of these legal arguments related to the proper approval and construction of the TMT project has been resolved, and has now been resolved for 2 years by a ruling of the Hawaii Supreme Court. That is in the matter of the contested case hearing regarding the Conservation District Use application, HA 3568 for the 30-meter telescope. In that ruling in 2018, not only the road issue, but every other issue that could have been addressed was, after 44 days of hearings, 71 witnesses, all of that evidence and testimony was taken by the hearings officer. She wrote her findings of fact and conclusions of law, which were challenged by protesters, went up to the Hawaii Supreme Court, which rejected their appeal and approved the project going forward. So I suppose my response is, be careful of the non-argument arguments, where people will try to pick apart as if that they were irrelevant, one thing or the other. All of the arguments and ample opportunity to raise all arguments over the past 11 years has, if it's made anything clear, it's made it clear that the project is properly permitted. And the only thing preventing it from going forward is, frankly, at this point, political will. It's not a legal question.
Thank you. So we have another question that came in. I'm just gonna ask it. It goes along the lines of Hawaiian and spirituality and science. It's does anyone on the panel have any thoughts on the connection between science and spirituality, especially in connection with the implications of quantum physics? I think, Makana, you want to start us off in this one?
Oh boy, yeah. For me, I can ramble forever about this. But the quick version is this. I'm here today, speaking my voice, my opinion, and those who cannot speak about their support as a Native Hawaiian for TMT, not because I am an astrophysicist, but because what I believe is going on Mauna Kea is perpetuation of our culture today. I've had this saying, perpetuation through contribution. What we remember today from our ancestors, not just Hawaiians, but all around the globe, is what's left behind, the legacy that's left, right? The bits and pieces of pottery, the tools that we dig up, thousands of years later, and we learn about our past. And I think today we have the opportunity to also contribute to humanity's legacy by engaging and contributing in a global effort on Mauna Kea, here in our own backyard, in science, in STEM. When we publish papers from science and analyses that occur right on top of that summit, that's contribution. That's the perpetuation. When they see Hawaiian names, not just as authors, but as discoveries. I don't know about you, but to me, that's the perpetuation of our legacy, right? We are understanding the history of who we are as human beings, right? Down to forget the cells and DNA, down to the atoms and molecules that make us. We are pure. The farther you look back with these telescopes, the further you look back in our history of what we are as humans, as a species, the planet formation, the star formation, solar system formation. It's a story. We are trying to peer into that history, that deep history, and turn that into a way so that we can learn not just more about ourselves, just for the heck of it, right? We're really trying to learn how we can take that knowledge, that ike, right, that knowledge, and perpetuate us as a people, as a global community. But I think Hawaiians, right now, this is the opportunity for us to be leaders in that. I think this is our opportunity right now to be able to advance forward and be at the helm of this new line of discoveries that's about to happen. So for me, when I talk about my support for TMT and on Mauna Kea, it's not a notion because I'm an astrophysicist. It's because I'm a Hawaiian. Because I want to see, not just our generation here, but my kids and my grandkids' generation be a part, right, of that advancement, of that discovery, to be part of the legacy. That's what it is. To advance our culture, to advance our people.
I'd like to just kind of share my thoughts on that question too. In Hawaiian culture, we have a chant called the Kumulipo chant, which is thousands of lines long, and it's a creation chant. It talks about the creation of the universe that we live in. And this chant states that everything we know to exist came from a time of po, of darkness. And this darkness was understood to be very energetic and necessary in creating all the matter that we know. And what I find incredible is that this is also a theory in science, the theory of the Big Bang. And so this notion, this symmetry of a theory in culture as well as in science has started a project led by Dr. Doug Simons of the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope and Dr. Larry Kimura, who's a very esteemed professor of Hawaiian language and very talented musician at the University of Hawaii. They have come together to join forces in a project called The Physics of Po and the Po of Physics. And this is a real life example of science and culture working together to gain knowledge. And so I think that TMT is very representative of a way that we can continue forward, progressing astronomy as well as remaining rooted in our culture and using the roots of our culture to stimulate the creativity that comes in science exploration.
Thank you, Mailani. I want to follow up with that. So, a little bit about your personal connection between Hawaiian and astronomy. Pre-contact Hawaiians did not use telescopes. So how is that your connection?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was mentioned earlier that Hawaiians were absolute experts of naked eye astronomy, being able to observe without telescopes. And kind of on a, I guess you could say, personal level, for me, what I think is when I go out and look up at the night sky, I remember that my ancestors for many, many generations before me looked up at the same night sky and saw the same stars. Perhaps some changes, supernova happens every once in a while, but
Beetlejuice.
but I remembered to myself that my ancestors may have been out on the ocean trying to find their way home and use the same stars, and I am in the same boat a few years later, where I'm here on the mainland pursuing my degree so that I can go home. It is just a different bit of context, but the same idea that the stars really, you can see them all over the world, but when you see them in Hawaii, it's very special, it's very different, and it's very unique. And just the utilization of astronomy in our culture, we were able to tell time, seasons with the stars. And so I believe that the stars are there much longer than we are, and that's why we can utilize them to connect to the generations that came before us, as well as the generations that are to come after us.
Thank you. So this one's for you, Kalepa. So in your opinion, do you think our ancestors would have opposed astronomy on the mountain?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, there's historical record of Hawaiians collaborating with Westerners from the very arrival, right? Captain Cook arrives in Hawaii in 1778. He arrives in January, sails off, and he arrives back on Maui in November. One unknown story is that when Captain Cook sails down the coast to Wailua Peninsula, where Kalani Opu, right, there was two warring chiefs, Kaikili and Kalani Opu. Kaikili was stationed in Kaualui. Kalani Opu was stationed down the coast at Kenai. Well, when he arrives at Kenai, he recruits a pilot to pilot his ship across to Hawaii Island and show him the coastline. So Kamehameha's brother volunteers, and then Kamehameha's brother recruits Kamehameha to tag along with them. So these two Hawaiians, or three Hawaiians, are on board Captain Cook's vessel, and while they're sailing with them, they're being exposed to these new technologies, and this new way of looking at the night sky, right? They're operating sextants. They actually record an eclipse on board Captain Cook's vessel while they're at sea with them. But eventually they end up on the west side of Hawaii Island at Kealakekua Bay. And one of the, Captain Cook's ships are on a scientific mission, and there's two ships, and they have portable observatories. And so they need a location to set up their observatory so they can conduct scientific research. And they the local chief goes and talks to the priestly class, and the priestly class insists that the telescopes be allowed to set up adjacent to the Hikiau Heiau. So, I mean, if you want to make the argument about desecration, then why would a priestly class allow telescopes on their own property, right? So they're there. Captain Cook is there twice. Vancouver comes back 12 years later. He uses the same location. On his fourth trip there, he's gonna go and use the same site again. Then the wife of one of the priests gets involved and denies him access. So Kamehameha asks Vancouver, well, can you go set up your telescope in another location? And Vancouver says, no, this is the best location in the whole bay. And so Kamehameha goes and asks the priestly class to make a ruling on whether Captain Vancouver can use that same location within the property, the boundaries of the Hikiau Heiau complex. And they agree. They insist that Vancouver continues to use that same property. And so, to me, this is the first actual case in Hawaii of a contested case hearing, right? Where Kamehameha is advocating for astronomy to continue, and where the priestly class, right, is insisting that they continue to use the same property. So historically, right, there is written documentation that we have collaborated with scientists from the very arrival of Westerners on the shores. So to answer your question, no. No, we would be collaborating with scientists, and we've, you know, what really saddens me is that we've forgotten, as Hawaiian people, we've forgotten these traditions, that we are connected culturally to the night sky, and we are connected to the sky in a way that allows us to explore it scientifically.
Those were the days, weren't they, Kalepa?
Yeah.
I mean, look at us now. There are arguments being asserted by people who are so far removed from authentic, genuine Hawaiian cultural practices that they feel free that they can kind of make it up. When right there in the historic record, we have the kahuna, the priest of our society, advocating for astronomy, not in some theoretical or academic way. It's put it here at the temple. That sort of respect for knowledge and knowledge of the skies is profound. And now to somehow claim that science and telescopes and the search for knowledge offends your culture only underscores the deep disconnect between culture and a political agenda. The truth is, many of the people who are making these arguments have nothing else going for them. This has now made some people celebrities and stars.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for that, and screw it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. The truth is the truth.
You know, in 1831, when we established education, public education in Hawaii at Lainaluna Seminary, right? One of the subjects they offered students there was astronomy, and Hawaiians had a craving for enriching their academic horizons, and they were hungering for new knowledge.
Yeah. So then, we got a question in. It's do we see a way to resolve conflict currently happening now at Maunakea? Who wants to take this one? Oh.
Okay, I'll take it.
Right on,
So,
Makana.
this is how I see it playing in my head. A resolution, a compromise, right? It depends who you're asking. Right now, there are people who support TMT, there's some people who hate the idea of TMT, and there's some people in between who are kind of like, I don't really know if I like it, I don't really know if I support it. So right now, currently in our community, not just locally, but globally, there's kind of this spectrum of ideas where people fall in. Now, when you ask me, is there a resolution? I would say, well, that depends where you fall on the spectrum. If you don't like TMT for reasons of it being environmentally detrimental and things of that sort, then if I could come and sit at a table with you and explain to you and show you the environmental impact statements, all 3 volumes, particularly volume 1, where they actually go into the actual mitigation measures of the environment and the telescope's impact to the entire ecosystem up there, then I would say we could probably come to some form of middle ground with the development of the TMT and the reassurance to them that this is not some pollutinous, detrimental factory that's going to poison the aquifers and destroy the entire aina, the land, the ecosystem up there, right? But now if you're going to come to me and say that I don't like TMT because it's not a Hawaiian thing to do, you know, there's not much compromise that can be done, right? The notion of a compromise means you don't get everything you want, but you fight for things that you like, but then the other people got to meet you halfway. That's what it's about. It's about meeting people halfway. It's about finding that middle ground. And so the farther dissonant you are on that spectrum, right? The farther you are to the extremes, to me, I would say it's going to be a lot harder to find a resolution. So the quick answer to that is that I don't think there's a single one-step thing that can be done that'll make both parties satisfactory. It really does depend on your reason for why, you know, you don't want TMT up there, or why you want TMT up there, and the other parameters for this function.
Yeah,
Thank you, Makana.
I don't think it's resolvable. My personal opinion. I don't believe it's resolvable, Tyler. I think this the positions are too pitted. One side just doesn't want a telescope, and the other side says the construction can begin, and they've met all the legal obligations for building it. And so I don't think it's resolvable unless the state state's going to do two things. They're either going to move the project ahead, or they can just sit on their thumbs and nothing's going to ever happen. However, this is a totally Hawaiian issue. The reason why we had such powerful chiefdoms in Hawaii was that, and we had multiple different leaders on different islands all ruling at the same time, was that they lived their lives based upon conviction. Yeah, they were willing to go to battle and lay their lives on the line for a position that they believed in. And the result of that action was either they were successful and continued living, or they lost their lives on the battlefield. Yeah, they were hauled off on the sacrificial altar of the heiau, or they were slain on the battlefield. And that's what produced such powerful chiefdoms. And I think we have the same situation today, where one side is saying absolutely no, and one side say we need to move the project ahead. So when you're unwilling to compromise and to barter and negotiate, you leave no options for either side. Again, as Kimo mentioned, the 1819 Battle of Kupono, the Battle of Kupono, where those that wanted to continue practicing the ancient religion battled with the forces of those that wanted to abolish the religion, and people died. And I think that the only possible avenue to unresolve this conflict is for law enforcement to restore to get involved. That's my opinion.
Tyler,
Yeah.
if I could just say this, it
Please.
is, and this is where I part from Makana and Kalepa to a certain extent. This isn't a matter of compromise. I mean, I've had several protesters admit to me that it's not really about the telescope. It's about 100 years of tears. It's about a culture and a way of life being ignored. It's about Hawaiian issues like healthcare, housing, and incarceration, all of which are issues of poverty. And for the first time, an issue has captured the imagination of people around the world. And this is being used as an opportunity to expand really a broader political agenda. This is what's called movement politics. Movement politics is not about compromise. It's the opposite. Movement politics is about asserting a position until you get a compromise from the other side. Is being just completely absolutist for your own part. And so to the extent that we are framing the argument as, well, it's just a matter of understanding what the protests are based upon and accommodating what those goals or desires are, is misleading. The current development plan was drafted with accommodation. The families that have an actual connection to the mountain, who have even a genealogy, in one case to Poliahu, the goddess of snow, had the input, and that is why there is no telescope on the actual summit. TMT is proposed to be 500 feet below in a valley, and it cannot even be seen from the summit because the summit is, from a cultural point of view, considered more important. TMT will not block the view of the rising sun or the setting sun, which is considered culturally important. TMT will not block the view of Haleakala on Maui, the biggest mountain on Maui. TMT will not, it's a closed system, so it cannot harm the environment. And so whether it's a culture concern, whether it's a access concern, whether it's an environmental concern, all of these were expressed in the conditional use permit process. So it is a false argument for anyone to say it's just a matter of compromise. That was built into the proposal, which was upheld by the Supreme Court. And that was one of the reasons why the Supreme Court upheld the conditional use permit, because they had accommodated environmental concerns, cultural concern, religious concerns, and access concerns. So that's done. But you see the point of movement politics, having achieved every single goal they sought in the conditional use permit process, that wasn't enough. They still need a platform for other political reasons. If we want to address the problems that really plague us, whether it's healthcare, housing, or incarceration, then we need some real political will, and not to, beat up on nerds on a mountain looking at stars. I mean, frankly, you three are easy targets for a lot of these guys. You guys are nerds. You sit around, look at computers. You're not physically threatening, other than Makana when he has, a little more than 6 or 7. So that's a different context. You're reasonable people, but we're not dealing with reason. This is about absolutism. This is about just saying no because it suits someone's political agenda. 2 of the most important protesters are now running for political office.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is not an accident.
Who's that? Walter and
Walter and Lanakila.
oh, Lanakila, yeah.
Yeah. I also want to add in on this. I completely agree. There's no. This is never going to be unanimous. There's nothing in this world that people can agree on unanimously. But one thing that I do believe in, which to be honest is why I partake in, being on these panels and everything, is the way I see it. And Kimo, you talked about this a little bit earlier, is that the disconnect that so many people have with real Hawaiian culture, the real history. And it seems like a lot of, because Hawaiians were so detached from their culture, only now after the Renaissance, people have the opportunity to learn about their culture, and they're taken to one side on this case of the 30-meter telescope. So I personally believe that by presenting, a Hawaiian culture that embraces modern astronomy, that is a way to meet a resolve with a lot of people. Because I feel like a lot of these people, they feel like when I meet friends, that is the Hawaiian stance, is to be against it. But that's because that's the only culture I think that was appealing to them. That's what they saw coming from Hawaiian culture leaders. But I think presenting, a more attractive version of Hawaiian culture that I think is more inclusive is the answer.
Well, Tyler, you can only take that position if you don't know what you're talking about. Kalepa pointed out how at the first contact with Westerners, Hawaiians embraced astronomy. You cannot be consistent. Before there was any other contact, Hawaiians embraced Captain Cook and his request to set up an astronomy, and they put it there at the temple. You cannot maintain a position that astronomy offends Hawaiian culture when you look at the pristine Hawaiian culture, untouched and uncorrupted by any other influences, immediately recognizing a couple of things. One of them was astronomy. The other one was metal. Before Cook came, we already had the word, so we somehow were aware of that, and we immediately recognized this value. We had no metal tools in Hawaii. We had no writing. We did not have the wheel. All of us use a knife to cut our fish. We are on computers and we write. And we drive a car that has wheels. That doesn't make us any less Hawaiian because we have a knife, a computer, and a car. It's unfortunately a silly argument. But, if you don't have knowledge, you can get away with that. But you can't do that on this panel. That's the difference.
I agree. So it seems like we also have another question that came in. So the question starts off as 20,000 people marched in a single day against the construction of the 30 million telescope. Do you really think the lease would be renewed after 2033?
Could I answer a little bit first?
Please go for it.
So I think this actually kind of ties into the previous question, is there a resolution? And the resolution I wanted to provide would have to come on behalf of those opposing and protesting the project. If they can show us a resolution that has just as much economical benefit to the island and the state, as well as impacting the world, the entire world from our small island in the middle of the Pacific, then that is a resolution, a different resolution. And I will say that I do not think that there is a resolution that can have as much impact to benefit us, our islands, and the world as TMT. And so because of this, and also because I will be there assuring that the lease gets renewed, it will be renewed. As long as I am Native Hawaiian and in astronomy, I will fight for the lease to be renewed when the time comes. And TMT has said that they will start construction, and if the lease does not get renewed, they will take it down at whatever phase they are at. It is their risk that they are willing to take. And so I'm just going to say that the notion that there's uncertainty in the lease, it needs to be squashed. There's no bad effect coming from whatever uncertainty there may be about renewing of the lease.
Thank you.
Tyler, Makana touched upon a really important point earlier when he talked about legacy. What is the legacy that astronomy may leave to Hawaii, the world, Hawaiian people, etc.? Look at the legacy that it will be left by protests. If protesters are successful, we get nothing. Nothing. We will lose the STEM scholarships at a rate of at least $1 million a year for 10 years. And if the project continues for another 40, that's another 40 years. The economic benefit to Hawaiians, if it were up to me, everybody on the mountain would be Hawaiian. When I visited the mountain last month, I met 9 people. 5 of them were from Keaka, Hawaiian homestead in Hilo. There is a direct, tangible connection of positive benefit that is completely absent in any of the protests, goals, and positions. They can only say no. And here's an easy example. Next door, my neighbor is rebuilding a big portion of his house. It probably took 30 minutes for an excavator to destroy or demolish that wing of his house. 30 minutes. It will take them months to rebuild. It is 100 times more difficult to create something than it is to destroy. It's really easy for people to complain and object and obstruct, but not a single protest effort will address diabetes or heart disease, will not build a single house for Hawaiians who are currently homeless or in substandard housing, and will not help a single brother transition from prison back to the real world. Those are our issues, and those are all issues of poverty. If we can lift 100 Hawaiian families a year, which is what the STEM scholarships represent, over a 10-year period, that's 1,000. That is 1,000 Hawaiian lives that can be changed. It is criminal to object to that. Show me any benefit from the opposition, and I'll embrace it. For me, this is not personal. I'm too old. It doesn't matter anymore. It's not personal. What's the benefit? before I die and I'm not well, we need to do something constructive and permanent for our people. And that legacy that Makana mentioned is important.
I agree. Mailani, you said something that I want to like ask more about. You know, you want to come back to Hawaii, and you said something I thought was very poetic, that the stars are leading you back to Hawaii. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so it is a very sad fact that I'm sure many of your friends, many of my friends, many of Makana's friends have to move to the mainland. We are being displaced, and this is because many of us are not getting an education in which we can get jobs that can afford the unfortunately expensive way of life to live in Hawaii. It is expensive to live there. Things have to be shipped and exported, and that raises their price, etc. And so for me, I am pursuing a higher level degree so that I can go home and I can be qualified to work as an astronomer on Maunakea, and that will enable me to be living there. And so, as Kimo has mentioned before, that, you know, poverty levels are very unfortunate in Hawaii. It is a big problem, and the scholarships through the Think Fund that TMT is offering will truly impact and benefit many Native Hawaiians so that they can receive an education that enables them to go home and be qualified for jobs there. And this is, it's a very passionate project that I have with my support for the TMT, is that the benefits to education will have a much longer term impact than any idea of just donating money. Here's money, people. But there's there's the saying that if you give a man a fish, it feeds him for a day. If you teach a man or woman to fish, it feeds them for a lifetime. And that's exactly what this opportunity with the 30-meter telescope presents. And we need to be able to embrace that instead of taking it away from the people of Hawaii that need it.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I want to ask a couple more questions before we get into some closing points. Start with here. Is it true that as a colonial power, the United States and its vassal, the state of Hawaii, have no legal authority over the sovereign lands of Mauna Kea? I think Kimo's legal question is perfect for you.
In short, there's nonsense. There's no legal authority to support this claim. On the other hand, there's significant legal authority supporting the jurisdiction in favor of the state of Hawaii. For example, the Texas annexation by joint resolution. Most protesters point to the fact that the territory of Hawaii was acquired by the United States by joint resolution as being unconstitutional and not supportable by law. Now, this is kind of in the weeds from a legal standpoint, but in DeLima versus Bidwell, the annexation of Texas by joint resolution was deemed valid by the United States Supreme Court. So if you're going to make a legal argument, you should probably read the law. And when the Supreme Court rules on an issue, there is no higher authority than that. And that position was also cited by the Hawaii Supreme Court in the contested case hearing. And the quote from the case is, "Whatever may be said about the lawfulness of its origins, the state of Hawaii is now the lawful government." And you can find that at 143 Hawaii 379, the 2018 Hawaii Supreme Court case. So it's a talking point, but it's not actually supportable by law. And the only reason that I'm involved in TMT at all is that I was simply exhausted by listening to Native Hawaiians who are protesting the TMT, frankly speak bubbles about law. It's not hard to just read and look things up and actually find out what's going on.
Okay, thank you. So we briefly touched on it before, but the personal attacks upon, Hawaiian TMT supporters. I was wondering if Mailani, you might have wanted to speak more on that.
Yeah, so I will share my personal experience. One morning I had woken up and I had heard my parents kind of arguing a bit, and then my dad walked into my room with a piece of paper that he had printed out, and my mom was telling him not to show me this piece of paper. And it actually was a Facebook posting that a protester had felt the need to share, that they thought that my throat should be slit and my blood shed on Maunakea. And I mean, words online can be hurtful, but I did not feel that my own physical well-being was in danger. But it really went to show that some people may be preaching about practicing kapu aloha, but on my personal experience, I have experienced the opposite of kapu aloha. And I just think it goes to show how unwilling certain people are to be civil and discuss the matter of TMT with someone who may have an opposite or differing opinion. And I would just say that the light that it will paint them in is their own doing. And I think it's very fair to say that many of us have probably felt a difference in the way that they are treated by people who have a different opinion. I've been treated much differently than before all of this by people, aunties and uncles that I've had my entire life. And I will just say that it's very shameful and it's very wrong for people to be persecuting any of us for supporting this project.
Mailani, when someone resorts to physical threats, it's when they've run out of ideas. So it's sort of the example of the bankrupt nature of the arguments against an inanimate object, a scientific instrument, and a project that extends enormous benefits to Hawaiian scholars. That's just shameful behavior, and it should be denounced by every person, particularly on the protest side. If you have brothers and sisters that are threatening anyone for taking their a heartfelt, genuine stance, frankly, one way or the other, that needs to be denounced by everyone. And I'll be the first. I denounce it. That is uncalled for, uncivil, and let me say un-Hawaiian.
Yeah, I agree. Did anyone else want to add to that? We're starting to run out of time, so after that, I was thinking we're going to go to our closing points.
Yeah, I can definitely add. I think Tyler, you can also maybe chime in or share in your experience, but I know for me, when my family them saw me on the news, they were like, "Oh, so what? You support them?" I was like, "Yeah." Oh, and then for some of those people, that was the last time I heard from them. Friends, real close friends. I'm talking about friends I grew up with. Last time I heard from them. I don't know. It really blows my mind to see the kind of devise this sort of, this sort of opposition is taking when you know, for me, whether you like TMT or not, for me, I still get history with you. You're still my blood. I still love you. But for some people, that's not the case. They see me as a traitor. They call me on whitewash Hawaiian, on fake Hawaiian. Yeah, let that sink in. Yeah, to be told that your identity, the same blood that runs through their veins as mine is fake. All because of what I believe in. To me, it's sickening. It really is.
Makana, what explains the transfer of the sense of grievance for the issues that we've talked about, healthcare, housing, prison, etc.? What explains the transference of those issues onto the TMT project? How are those two even related?
From a negative impact, in no way. I mean, protesting that, I don't know how that's not going to fix the healthcare. If TMT go away, that's not going to fix healthcare. It's not going to fix my brother and my sisters all going to jail, and it's not going to fix my aunties and uncles homeless.
Now, if that is
Nothing.
obvious, to make the mental leap, if you're a protester, you'd have to ignore the obvious then.
You know, I would just like to say that I do believe that there are protesters who are protesting due to the grievance that they feel. They feel that they have been wronged. But as a Hawaiian, I never ever thought that my people were the ones to play victim. I always thought that we would be strong in our resolve, and when there were problems that needed to be fixed, we would, you know, put our heads down and do it. And so I think that I think it just needs to be said that the issues due to poverty are, and even the notion of sovereignty that are being placed on TMT are completely invalid and irrelevant.
You know, Mailani, I kind of want to build real quick, if can,
Mhm.
get time. It's kind of about hankering down and being strong. You know, I'm sure we can all agree, whether you agree with TMT or not, there was a point in our history where our people, we almost disappeared. Our culture almost disappeared, right? I think Kibo and Kalepa can relate, but there was a point when my older family members, bro, they got beating. You speak Hawaiian. You get beating. You practice the culture. It was forbidden. And then came a point where finally it took great thinkers, brave Hawaiians, right? Took Kalakaua, took Bernice Pauahi Bishop, people like them, Hawaiians like them, who came up and finally said, you know what, we're gonna do something different. They created new forms of Hawaiian art, Hawaiian education, Hawaiian science. Kamehameha Schools was born to teach, right, our culture and our history, but to also prepare Hawaiians for the big, scary world out there. Because boy, it's cold, and I promise you that it's cold out there, guys. And my people prepared me for that harsh reality. It made me as a Hawaiian ready to go out there and fight for what I need to do so I can come back home. You know, it blows my mind when we're at a period where we're about to make that next step, that next renaissance, that next advancement, and it's being said that it's not Hawaiian. Like, what, bro? I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, that's just what I want to add on.
Well, very valid points. Very valid.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's perfect to lead into we'll about wrap this up. It's been an hour and a half now, so I want to start with some closings, just some last points people want to talk about. I'll start with how's about who wants to go?
Closing statements?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd be happy to start off. You know, so I am Mailani Neal. I am a native Hawaiian, and I am in the process of becoming an astronomer. Someday I will be a native Hawaiian astronomer on the best site in the world to conduct astronomy. As I have said before, I find that the stars are a way that I feel connected to the generations of Native Hawaiians before me, as well as the next Hawaiians to come after me and long after that I'm gone. And so I just want to say that our ancestors followed the stars to Hawaii, and now we have the chance to follow the stars and to lead the world in following the stars to the greater universe, to pursue knowledge that will benefit us. And we have to take this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mailani. Makana, you want to go next?
Shoot. First and foremost, mahalo. Thank you to all those listening to us and taking time out of your busy schedules, because this is what needs to happen. These voices, these thoughts, the mana'o needs to be out there for the world to hear. And the only reason why, I'm really involved again is because I am a Hawaiian, right? In Hawaiian, when I say I'm a Hawaiian, we say, hey, Hawaii'o, right? My blood is from the same people who's buried in these grounds today. And I stand here, not as an astrophysicist, not as a scientist, right? But I stand here today in support of this project because as a Hawaiian, I want a better quality of life than what's given to us now. I want better for my keiki, I want better for my kids, better for my family, and better for my community. Who doesn't want that? Thank you. Thank you again, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Makana. Kimo, you want to go next?
O Mauliola ko inoa. He Hawaii'o. Like Makana, I'm Hawaiian. And when Europeans were afraid to leave the sight of land, Hawaiians used the stars to navigate with confidence and purpose, and they established a thriving society in Hawaii. You can draw a direct line from the star-based navigation of Hawaii and the TMT. Respect for Maunakea is consistent with modern astronomy. And as we sit here in our social distance isolation because of a pandemic, it is ever more important to support science at every level. The best minds right now are trying to develop a vaccine. It took 5 to 6 years to develop a vaccine for Ebola. We don't have that kind of time to waste with the COVID-19. Likewise, we don't have the time to waste with regards to a project that offers nothing but benefit for our island, nothing but benefit for the people of the world, and is entirely consistent from its earliest times in terms of astronomy and Hawaiian people. To the extent that there is another day of delay, that is another defeat and failure for Hawaiians. And to all of my brothers and sisters out there, particularly those of you who have been threatened, both personally and on social media, like everybody on this panel, do not lose heart and take some small measure of comfort in that someone who is threatening you has run out of ideas. That means they cannot make an argument. That means you win. And eventually the truth is the truth. Mahalo nui for everyone for allowing us to speak to you this morning or afternoon. Aloha.
Thank you, Mo. Clappa, would you like to
Yeah,
finish?
just, Hawaii was one of the last places in the world to have been settled by people, right? So as Hawaiians, we have benefited from the accomplishments of every previous generation, not just going back to time when the first canoes arrived here, but for all people migrating around the planet, from people that were the early explorers, people migrating out of Africa to the shores of Asia. So we as humanity have always benefited by the successes of previous generations. And we as Hawaiians we are the most resilient people on the planet. Pandemics is not new to us, right? Talk about smallpox and measles infecting and decimating our population, right?
Mm-hmm.
This pandemic is not new to the Hawaiian people, but yet as a people, we have survived. One thing I'm just gonna add is that I have, you know, social media, I'm sure there's been attacks on my personality, but out in the public, I've had no pushback. In fact, I've had more support, more people walking up to me and thanking me for my position. And so I'm not gonna be the victim of circumstance, right? You know, I wanted to build a house for my family, so I applied to Hawaiian Homes and that never came through. And so I built my own house. When things wasn't going good in my life, I went back and got an education. I got my BA and I got my my master's. I did that late in life. So I have always been about helping myself move forward. And that's been the lesson of previous generations of Hawaiians living on these islands, is that we make the best out of whatever circumstance that we are afforded, and we do good for ourselves. And so I am part of this great legacy of resiliency and Hawaiian race that have always looked towards distant horizons and seen beyond those horizons for the possibilities of what island lay just below that horizon. And so I want to thank the listeners for participating in this panel discussion this morning, and thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Clappa, and thank you all panelists. I guess I'll just finish off with some of my own closing thoughts. You know, every generation has the power to define the culture for future generations. And as you heard, you know, from the panelists, their take on Hawaiian culture, and I'm sure many of you have heard, you know, the protesters' take on Hawaiian culture. And, you know, the panelists here believe that TMT is fully consistent, you know, and protesters believe that it's not, it's actually, you know, inappropriate. But bottom line is, culture, we can make it up, we can decide what it is. And to me, it makes no sense to say that modern astronomy is inappropriate for Hawaii. Because to say that, you are closing the doors for all Hawaiians to ever be a part of this. I mean, we talk about Hawaiians being able to come back to Hawaii. One of the main things to decimate a culture is to take the people from their land. By having the telescope in Hawaii, by having modern astronomy, an opportunity in Hawaii, we allow more Hawaiians to stay home, be connected to the land. And to me, growing up, that was important, connection with the land. So as my power and as everyone's power into deciding what culture is, I think we should decide that Hawaiian culture is embracing and is inclusive of modern astronomy. Thank you all for listening.
Mahalo, Tyler.
Mahalo, Tyler.
Thank you.
Mahalo to all the panelists. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody at UC Riverside and everybody who tuned in. If you want to, you know, contribute, continue staying involved, you know, go to our website, imuatmt.org, go to our Facebook page, go to our YouTube channel, you know, spread this message around, send the links around. You can donate to imuatmt.org. And just want to close by saying, you know, that a number of years ago, back when astronomy started on the Big Island had just been hit by a tsunami. So part of the economic reasoning behind bringing the astronomy industry in, especially on those $1 rents, was because of a disaster. And now we're in the same situation here where this pandemic has caused an economic disaster. So, you know, if you want to take action now, write the governor and tell him, you know, this is the time to start talking about what the reality is that we want TMT, we want astronomy on Mauna Kea, we want to keep it here, we want to build it, we want it to expand, we want to extend the lease, we want a tech cluster to build up around Mauna Kea at UH, at the University of Hawaii system. That's what Hawaii is looking for in the future, to build resiliency, to expand our culture, and to make our economy stronger. And this is the time to do it, and because the policy discussions are going to happen. So thank you to everybody here. Mahalo, and we will keep this going. We'll see you later. Aloha.
Also, a big mahalo and thank you to our tech support, without whom this would not be possible. So
thank you, guys. Olivia and with you.